again, it's kind of wonky kind of stuff, but it's the specifics that I was about the actual ability of fraud in some of these government agencies of being able to get to stuff and some of the protocols that we use. Again, it's not real sexy, but it's and you'll never focus on that. But the guy answered it like I thought he would. He said these agencies, in fact, are wide open for abuse, and that we do not do any. There is no clarification or classification to put things in, and they've just run amok for years, if not decades. And I think you're going to see that when we get to Medicaid, Medicare, the fraud of that's going to be huge. And you're seeing a lot of, USAID was the hot one, but the NIH, National Institutes of Health, is putting all these grants out to these colleges and universities. And who is pitching a fit now?
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm host David Frum. Before the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, came along, Senator Rand Paul used to release his annual Festivus report, which was a snapshot of government waste that most of Washington preferred to ignore. Take 2015, for example. In the report, it showed NASA spent $15 million studying golf equipment in space. Or 2019, when the State Department spent $15.8 million so international students could attend community college for free. Paul's report got some attention, but it wasn't exactly making headlines every day. But now, thanks to DOGE, even folks who don't like politics are paying attention to the fraud and waste being exposed. And it's not just Elon Musk's DOGE team putting in the work. The House's Oversight Subcommittee, delivering on government efficiency, will also be working to find waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer money. Today's guest is a member of the subcommittee, and he's no stranger to working on cutting wasteful spending or government transparency. He was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, and before heading to Congress was elected mayor of Knox County, where he built a reputation for being fiscally conservative and unafraid to buck the system. And before that, he served over a decade at the state level. He was elected to Congress in 2018, and unlike a lot of politicians, he doesn't sugarcoat things, and his down-home humor makes him stand out in D.C. I want to welcome to the podcast Congressman Tim Burchett, who represents Tennessee's 2nd Congressional District. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank y'all for having me. It's a very big honor.
Well, no, our honor's ours. Thanks so much. So before we get started, I've talked to some of our Tennessee friends, and I was asked to ask you, which is your favorite? Bigfoot, aliens, or your longboard?
I don't know. I got one of my longboards back here, and I got another one I'm working on in the corner. I don't know. I guess my skateboards that I make are not covered up. Seems all the UFO stuff's covered up. So it just depends on what day it is, who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to an admiral and he's telling me they exist, I'm big on UFOs. If I'm sitting in a skiff with some punk kid with a man bun acting arrogant and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm not really on to them then. So I guess I just kind of go back and forth, brother.
Yeah, all right. We'll say 1A, 1B. How about that?
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks so much for joining. I think, it's so timely right now with what, DOGE is doing, what you're doing in Congress. Just to start out, I mean, some people say that what Elon Musk is doing, that he doesn't really have the authority to do it. What do you think about that? Is there any truth to that?
I think he does. I think the president, everything he does is through presidential action or orders, and he goes with the authority of the president. If you go down that line, then I guess the IRS taken my dadgum money for the last 55 years of my 60 years existence. I guess they didn't have the ability to do that either, because they're just a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. So I like what he's doing. I think they're shooting the message carrier myself. I hope he piles it on the next 100, 150 days before Congress loses its courage.
Yeah, well, I really thought one of the coolest things that President Trump did right out of the gate was just, not only the practical part of DOGE and what they're uncovering, but just the symbolic part of DOGE, putting a guy of Elon's, stature, Vivek at the time, I mean, I thought they really sent the right message to say, hey, I'm really serious about cutting spending and uncovering waste.
Yeah, it's in some international prominence and somebody his caliber. And what he does, and the critics have been quick to point this out. He's never made a rocket ship. He bought a rocket company. He never made electric vehicle. He bought he never did this. What he does is brings good people to the table. And that's exactly what he's done, because that's why the left and the Marxists and communists and Congress are pitching such a fit. These young people are just uncovering decades of abuse to the American taxpayer and outright theft. And the ones that squeal the loudest are generally the ones that are stealing the most.
So in what they've uncovered, I mean, we're at the super early stages. I mean, is there anything that's really surprised you?
No. I mean, I knew they were stealing, and I knew it was at high levels, because it had to be at high levels with all the control they had. They had our national media, and major politicians were obviously compromised in both parties, allowing this to happen all the way up to the President of the United States. And so, it had to be big. For those kind of risks you take, it better be a big return. And it was a big one.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we're super excited about it. I'm just personally excited about it. I can't believe some of the things that keep coming out. I know that there's more. Before we talk about the DOGE, the subcommittee that you're on, can you first explain to listeners like how a subcommittee is created and how members are selected, like just some of the process?
Yeah. We had a lot of caucuses and things like that don't do anything. They're created so lobbyists can get a paycheck. Most they go, well, he's a member of the underwater pottery class caucus, or whatever, and they don't do anything. And but this is actually a legitimate subcommittee, and what it's under the umbrella of oversight. Chairman Comer decides to do a committee. And then he goes to the speaker, makes sure the funding's there for it, because you have staff and there's things that have to be done. And the chairman of the committee picks the chairman of the subcommittee. And in this case is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it's primarily left up to her who she puts on the committee. And she and I have been close friends since she got to Congress, and she likes the fact that I'm a fiscal conservative, and so it's worked out really well. And, it depends on if they have the power of subpoena and other things, and we do have that power, and we'll start using it. We'll be able to call people in. If they don't, they could risk going to jail, actually. I threw Steve Bannon in jail when that kangaroo court so-called committee that they had on January 6th called him in, and he refused to come in, I think rightfully so. But this is a legitimate committee, and the Democrats will be able to appoint, I think we appoint 6, they get to appoint 5, and that's the way it's gone down.
So the subpoena power seems to be one of the real differences between what Musk's DOGE team can and cannot do. Are there any other ones that are?
No, I think that's pretty much, the president has given them almost unlimited access to everything, which I think is important. I find it odd that they're critical of Musk and getting into IRS records and things like that when he, of course, had PayPal, which is pretty much a universally accepted way to transfer funds. I've used it in eBay for years and send friends money and things. It's a secure method. And oddly enough, it's never been hacked. But the IRS has been hacked on a regular basis. You have access to people's personal files by interns. We've had instances, I believe, where prisoners have been and processing of tax forms and things. So, it falls on deaf ears. The statement that they're getting at people's personal records, and that violates their rights. And they all say, well, this violates the Constitution. Well, show me in the Constitution. Just show me. Everybody just says those things blanket, and everybody just like, oh, it's unconstitutional. That's just not the case. And I couldn't be happier. But again, I want to warn people, we've got to back this stuff up with legislation, because the next president could come in and through just a stroke of a pen could change it all right back to the way it was.
I mean, from talking to your colleagues, at least on the Republican side, is there a real enthusiasm around this, or is there a trepidation and like kind of a nervousness around this, heightened transparency and holding people accountable?
I think they're afraid to be against it. The vast majority of them are very excited, but you've got some that are clearly, as I like to say, their wives and or girlfriends work for some of these quasi agencies and businesses that would stand to profit from some of the largesse of these, turns out, trillions of dollars that we're apparently wasting. And so I think there's a real, there's a nervousness about it because they're just wondering where it will go. And I was thinking of a tweet earlier I'd put out, something to the effect of, when they're cutting this fat, I didn't know they were going to cut my fat.
It's exactly true. So you guys had your first subcommittee hearing, if I'm correct, on the 12th, February
Yes, sir.
12th. So how'd it go?
Correct.
And what'd you ask
It was excellent. Actually, the chair lady, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I thought she kept her composure very well. I thought she kept the tone of the meeting going and in the focus on what we needed to be focusing on, and moved in a very methodical manner. And I thought it went really well. And we had some fireworks. I mean, the left, the Marxists, all they can do is attack the message carrier. They could not attack the message. And it just went on, and it went, I thought, in a very systematic method, and it went very well. I couldn't have been more pleased with the committee, the way it moved, and the things that we talked about, because we had people in there, some of these are bureaucrats or somebody works for an agency or what have you, and they answered the questions, and we brought a lot of things out. But I think in the future you'll see more of that, and I think you'll see some real fireworks come out of this committee, because we're going to come up with legislation. We're going to bring people in. We're going to put people on the spot and find out where we're spending all this money. And two, I think we'll come up with some legislation too because of some of this.
Yeah, that's fabulous. How do you guys interact at all with the Department of Government Efficiency under Musk? Do they feed anything to you? How do you guys kind of practically collaborate?
Marjorie has kept good contact with them. And, I guess you could bum rush them. And there's a move by the Democrats to, of course, bring Musk in, subpoena him. And all that is an attempt to make him, try to embarrass him and try to slow the program down. And I just don't see any need to have anything to do with literally, we're calling people in on our own, and we're allowed, and they're not directing us, so to speak. So there's a separation there, which I think should be. We're a fairly independent committee, which is very important in this issue, because again, 100 days to 150 days before we lose our nerve in Congress.
Uh-huh. Going back to the committee hearing, who were some of what did you ask witnesses? And was there anything that you didn't get to ask?
No, I just, again, it's kind of wonky kind of stuff, but it's the specifics that I was about the actual ability of fraud in some of these government agencies of being able to get to stuff, and some of the protocols that we use. Again, it's not real sexy, but it's and you'll never focus on that. But the guy answered it like I thought he would. He said these agencies, in fact, are wide open for abuse. And that we do not do any, there is no clarification or classification to put things in. And they've just run amok for years, if not decades. And I think you're going to see that when we get to Medicaid, Medicare, the fraud of that's going to be huge. And you're seeing a lot of, USAID was the hot one, but the NIH, National Institute of Health, is putting all these grants out to these colleges and universities. And who is catching a fit now? Colleges and universities, because they're using a large percentage of that money for administrative fees, not for, you're hampering our research. No, we're hampering your profit that you should not be making. Colleges and universities need to get back to educating children. Capitalism is a great motivator for finding a cure for a disease. If socialism worked, then that's why the British, that's why they've never really come up with any great cures. It's all capitalism that generally does. socialized medicine runs aground.
Yeah, it has been fascinating to see the pushback against this effort. And just in my narrow mind, I'm amazed that people could push back against just these egregious cases of waste and fraud and abuse. But yet we had, U.S. senators going all throughout D.C. with, singing songs and holding hands with government employees like it was like a 1960s rally. And just taking
this isn't a civil rights issue. This is a right. This is basically just, are you stealing our money or not? And do you have a right to that? In Upper East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene blew through here and just did horrible damage. We voted for $100 million new dollars for FEMA. I voted against it because I figured they do one of two things. They either steal it or misdirect it. Well, it turned out they did a little bit of both. They sent $54 million of it to a hotel up in New York so they could house illegals. And until Trump rolled in, those people up in North Carolina were still in tents and were still doing without electricity and water. And that's the kind of things. Madagascar, $10 million for voluntary circumcisions. They're voluntary, but still, what the heck are my tax dollars doing for $10 million over there?
I'd love to hear that testification in committee.
LGBTQ comic books. And it used to be the State Department. Well, I don't know if they ever did, actually. They've mostly been left-wingers. But you would think they promote two great things about this country: democracy and capitalism. And, it's all transgender identity stuff, and it's just pathetic. The tens of millions of dollars that we're wasting on these crazy things. And it turns out, as Elon said the other day, that around $3 trillion, they don't even have a record of where it went.
It's so unbelievable, especially in this day and age with the technology available to us. You mentioned, the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. I mean, there are things that we think the government can step in and fund and be really helpful to the people on. I think a lot of us would agree that, that would be a case. And, we had a lady on just a few weeks ago who runs a homeless veterans charity. And but in Asheville, and she was talking about the impact and, the aftermath and how things have not, gotten a lot better, how about people have banded together in other organizations to try to improve things. And it just strikes me that the money that is being uncovered, the incredible amounts of money that are being uncovered, being wasted, could go to the appropriate purposes, let alone go back to the people who are fighting with their tax dollars. But I can't believe that, so many people want to defend this.
And stuff like this is easily fixable if we had the guts to do it. We've got National Guard set up in all states. That should be an apparatus we could use. We could just send a funding mechanism in the federal government, certain criteria they meet, the money goes to the states. Let the states be held accountable, the governors, the state legislators. Same way with the Department of Education. Shut it down. Send that money to the states in the form of block grants. Let the locals be held accountable for that. And the state, of course, the state legislators, the local school boards, state school boards, and then parents would have more input. And also you could pay your teachers more, but the unions won't be for that. They're not for paying their teachers more. They're for the union.
Right. So with regard to the subcommittee, what are the next steps? I think you talked about, is it more hearings and then hopefully resulting in legislation? Maybe kind of talk to just a little bit about, looking at your crystal ball, what that might look like.
Well, okay, say one of my personal passions is the Pentagon. They've not failed or actually completed the last 8 audits that they were given. They cannot account for over $500 billion. That's an aircraft carrier. $500 billion they can't account for. And and how do we punish them? We're going to in this current beautiful big budget, we're going to give them more money. And I would like to bring them in and make them justify some of these defense systems that we are building in very influential members of Congress's district that are being mothballed once they are completed. We just can't We can't do it. Wars have changed. The way we fight. My dad fought in the Second World War. Those are Japanese rifles. He took off the dead Japanese that he had a part in killing. And he, that war, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. 6 months later, our economic might, we started rolling across the Pacific and then going into Europe. But you know what? We never, that's not the way the war is going to be fought today. It's going to be drone technology. It's going to be other things. And manless flights, things like that. And saving lives, actually, and not putting so many people in harm's way, hopefully. Cruise missiles, things like that. Drones be everywhere. And I think that's where we need to be putting our money instead of these antiquated systems that continue to baffle me that we put any money into them. But it's part of the machine. And as I call them, the war pimps at the Pentagon, business is war, and their business is pretty good right now. We've got some real problems there. And I'd hope we start identifying some of those. And of course, you get a lot of whistleblowers that come forth, and we've got just continuous. I'd say every week I get a new call from somebody or something and point me in a direction. There's just so much. It's just so much that you can't even fathom the numbers and the people that have been sitting on this stuff for so long. And I guess my question is the psychology of it. Why have they been sitting on it so long, and why now? I guess now they see it's kind of come out of the shadows, and with Musk and the president openly talking about it and exposing it. And now they're talking about, having a DOGE dividend, which I'm not a fan of. I wish they'd just pay down our debt, but I just cringe. I realize that's a stimulus type thing. And again, it's our money. They say, well, give it back. I wish they just give it back to me in the form of lower taxes.
Amen. So I need to pass the Tax Cut and Jobs Act or reauthorize.
Yes, sir.
Well, hey, so you've been in Congress for 6 years?
It's my 7th year.
7th, yeah, going to 7. Way to go! So, how do you feel about the American people, being able to see this much transparency when it comes to government spending?
Yeah, I hope they come to expect that. When I was mayor of Knox County, the reason we were so successful, we paid down the unbelievable amount of $40 million, which the government has wasted that much probably since I took my last dadgum breath, speaking to you here. But, the way we did that was by transparency. I called the county commissioners in at budget time, and then I explained to them how this affected the county and their district specifically. And then I would go out after we presented the budget to the public. I would go out and sell it to them and break it down piece by piece. I'd take all my department heads that were affected with me, so people could ask questions, so they'd be more informed. And I think we need more of that. I don't know about the public forum thing. That's just an event for people to show up and show out and do something for the media that's generally not very productive. But I wish we could get back to constructive criticism and single issue spending bills. I feel like that's the number one. Well, if we had, like we do in Tennessee, we balance the budget every year. It's constitutionally mandated. We're mandated to pass a budget, and we haven't done it in over 30 years. So anyway, it's just a continuation of that. I would hope that the transparency would catch on and they'd demand it from here on out. Because could you imagine if instead of having a 3,000-page bill, which is what this big, beautiful bill is going to be, if we had every aspect of it was broken down and every person who supported that or brought that portion to the table had to go on the House floor or the Senate floor and defend that. I could defend everything I put out there because it's either needed or it's paid for or it saves money. But I have a bill that I found out we're giving the Taliban, if you can believe this, $40 million a week. These terrorists will hate us for free, but we orchestrated that and we got to stop it. We got to stop it with all these terrorists. So anyway, those are the kind of things that I'm interested in. And you're right. Transparency is the key to all of this.
Yeah, I really think that, the American public I always want to think the American public is their eyes are going to be open and they're going to see really what's going on. That's probably a little optimistic, but I do think that what the president's been doing, what DOGE is doing, what you're doing, and putting that out there, there's such egregious waste that it really is starting to capture some people's imagination and capture their attention. So hopefully that translates into strong will on the part of you and of your colleagues.
Yeah, I hope it does. I hope the American public backs up the president on this DOGE stuff. But I hope we get control of the spending. It's not going to do us any good if we save $2 trillion and we turn right around and add it on somewhere else like the Pentagon. That's no savings there. It's just we're finding money that's shipped around to somewhere else.
Yeah, well, we'll have to keep applauding Secretary Hegseth now and hope that he does his job like he says he would.
Yes, sir. I would say that's a start. If he gets everything he wants, I'd say that's a start.
That is a behemoth, man. I give you a lot of credit for going and tackling that. Well, Congressman, I really appreciate you. First, the work that you're doing. I mean,
thank you, brother.
This is really great stuff that's so necessary for our country, and it takes courage. I mean, I know that you have a thick skin, and you probably don't care what a heck of a lot of the people have to say about you when you're kind of goring their ox. But it takes a lot of courage, and groups like ours are really appreciative of the work that you do day in and day out for your constituents and country. I'm
appreciative of y'all. I hope y'all don't get compromised by them loading your good legislation up with a bad piece of legislation and forcing people like myself to make those tough decisions, because that's why I think the single issue bills would be the cure to all that.
We're big supporters of that. Get back to regular order, not just jam stuff through in the dead of the night and not let anybody know what's going on.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Congressman Tim Burchett, thank you so much for being with us. Folks, having a government that's transparent is important because America needs to know where their hard-earned money is going. So hopefully this new subcommittee will be able to highlight some of the most outrageous spending that doesn't benefit America, and will be stopped. So if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with this podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.